time to get it all done while you feel like you're running around ragged? Keep listening as we keep it real, talking about how to find balance as a busy physician. This is the Physician Philosopher Podcast. I'm Dr. Jimmy Turner, an anesthesiologist, online entrepreneur, and creator of the Alpha Coaching Experience. The Physician Philosopher Podcast teaches you how to create the life you deserve, one thought at a time. Start before you're ready. Start by starting. Start now. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to episode number 74 of the Physician Philosopher Podcast, where we take an uncurated and unapologetic look into physician life, money, and mindset. So today's thought is this: we can master our schedule as busy physicians, or our schedule will master us. So what's up, everybody? Each week on this show, I say that we're going to take an uncurated and unapologetic look into physician life. And in this episode, we're going to do just that by taking an uncurated and unapologetic look into my own life. Why? Well, man, it has been really busy. I just finished up my second round of edits on my upcoming book, Determined, How Burned Out Doctors Can Thrive in a Broken Medical System. I'm super excited about it. I'm really proud of it too, but wow, like I'd be lying if I said I didn't have a lot of excitement about that being done, about checking that off the checklist after, working on this book for the last 6 months, 9 months. To get this item done, off the checklist is huge. And so in addition to the book, though, I've also got some other really exciting things going on. I decided to apply for a master's degree in medical management. I've talked about that and mentioned it on the show recently in a podcast or two. And when I did that, my sister, who also happens to be our amazing business manager here at the Physician Philosopher, sent me a message, and she's like, hey, so Jimmy, I trust you and I love you and you're amazing, but are you adding too much to your plate? This is basically the gist of the message. She started pointing out things like, hey, the book's going to be coming out in the next 3 to 4 months, which you're going to need to promote. You're finally building MDFU, which is that personal finance product for physicians in training that I've wanted to get off the ground for like 2 years. You still have ACE, our coaching program, the podcast, and oh yeah, you're a dad to 3 kids and a husband. Do you really want to add a master's degree on top of all that? And while I kind of viewed this as putting a pan in the fire, which is kind of my MO, the putting pans in the fire and seeing which ones are going to catch, it is sometimes disconcerting for others who care about me because, rightfully, like my sister was concerned because she loves me and she knows that I have a penchant for running myself into the ground. And I love creating content. I love being productive, hence all of the podcasts, the books, the courses, the coaching. But sometimes I have a history of overdoing it. In fact, last October, that's exactly what I did. I actually took a break, and many of you probably remember this who listen to the podcast, right? I went like 3 months without recording a podcast. I recorded a book. I wrote a book, and I came back and I was honest with with all of you about part of the reason that I took a break is because I was having a hard time. I just had too much going on. I was struggling with the direction that I was heading professionally, and so I spent the next 3 months taking a break from the podcast and a lot of other stuff. And honestly, I spent the next 6 months, really trying to work on getting clarity and about my overall purpose. Until I figured that out, I kind of drove myself into the ground doing a lot of stuff, trying to shotgun approach it because I couldn't really make the diagnosis of what do I want in my life? Like what am I trying to accomplish? What is the bigger reason? What's the overall why? And it didn't go so well. So rightfully, my amazing sister was concerned. And she was just asking me, hey, do you just want to slow down for a minute and maybe consider if you're putting too much onto your plate? And I don't know another way to think through this than to get my thoughts out on paper. And so that's exactly what I did in the show, working through my priorities. And this is something that I do regularly, to be honest. I think that Greg McKeown got it right in his book, Essentialism, when he said something like, if you don't prioritize your life, someone else will. And it isn't an accident that we spend so much time on the show talking about things like the hell yes policy, which I love to talk about. I love teaching others how to say no to anything that doesn't make them say hell yes. In fact, there are 3 pillars that we teach inside of the Alpha Coaching Experience, and they are mindset, money, and time management, basically building your ideal work-life balance. So in the show, as ever, I'm setting out to keep it real, to let you in on how I'm thinking through this process in real time. Have I bit off more than I can chew? Am I saying no to all the things that don't make me say hell yes? Like, if that's what I say and encourage other people to do, am I doing that myself? So we're going to talk about it. But before we jump into that, I do want to be honest about something. A huge help for me and my family in finding balance has been the ability to build non-clinical income. That balance that we have that I've been trying to upset with this master's degree. And so that financial freedom that comes from having non-clinical income outside of medicine that allows me to practice medicine because I want to and not because I have to. And starting in May, I'm going to be back to pretty much full time. That said, clinical income is important. Great. And I love you. I love that, you are listening to the show as a doctor and that you love medicine. But at the same time, we got to be honest that non-clinical income can provide a lot of freedom. And maybe you're interested in doing that. Maybe you're interested in creating non-clinical income so you can go part-time or take a step back or have some freedom from medicine. And one of the best ways to do that, one of the most common ways that doctors do that is through real estate. But you don't want to be a landlord. So I wanted to make sure that you all know that the Passive Real Estate Academy, which is run by my buddy, Dr. Peter Kim over at Passive Income MD, that's open for enrollment. And that's exactly what they do. They basically help docs go from zero or little knowledge to confidently investing in passive real estate opportunities in just 4 weeks and reaching the goal of creating an additional stream of income. So that is open for enrollment, but the enrollment ends on April 17th. So if you're listening to this live and for the first 4 or 5 days after the show goes live, go enroll, go check it out, learn more about it. If you're listening to this after the fact, just go join the wait list and you can join the next time that enrollment opens. But to learn more and to join, visit thephysicianphilosopher.com/PREA as in Passive Real Estate Academy, or you can just click the link in the description of the show on your podcast player. So you just look at the description, the info for this show on your podcast player, and the link will be right there. Just click it. But speaking about balance, non-clinical income can help you do that, but you can also manage your time and become the master of your schedule instead of letting your schedule master you. So that's what we're going to talk about. Life as a spouse, a parent, and a physician can be busy. Mine is. I've got 3 kids. I'm married to my amazing, much better half, Kristen, and it can just be really busy. And you add in there an entrepreneurial effort like the business that I'm running at the Physician Philosopher, and now it kind of feels insane. Oh, and then I wanted to add a master's degree because I'm thinking about doing that because, hey, maybe I want to be in medical management someday. If I want to change this, this scene, this dumpster fire called medicine, then oftentimes that needs to be done from the inside. And speaking of which, I've had some of you reach out to me and, via email. And one theme that I kind of hear over and over again, which is actually really kind of nice, is, I do coach and I have created freedom, but I haven't left medicine. And a lot of people reached out to me and said, hey, Jimmy, I actually really appreciate your perspective because you're still in the arena. You're still, battling it out in medicine. And so I really appreciate your perspective because, a lot of people that talk about finding balance and then they open up these, coaching practices, they aren't actually practicing medicine. And so I really appreciate your perspective because you're still doing this, this thing and coaching doctors while actually practicing medicine. And, I really appreciate that feedback, honestly, because that is important to me to understand like where you guys are coming from as listeners. And also, the fact that I really am trying to find that balance. Like I'm living this life as well. And that's why I think any coach that's worth a lick of salt usually has a coach themselves. And so this is something that I've been working through. And so I'm going to keep it real and honest with you about this process, about thinking through this. How can we find balance when we have a ton of responsibilities like the ones that I just mentioned? And when I think through the current asks on my time, I tend to break them up into a few different ways of thinking about them. And so I want to teach you a couple of ways to prioritize your time as a physician who's busy by taking a look into my life right now as I sort through this decision about pursuing a master's degree or not. And so here are some things that are currently huge asks on my time that I'm considering pursuing, right? I have the clinical work that I do as a physician. So in May, I'll be working at least 3 days a week. And in addition to the anesthesia practice, I've got my book, which is coming out called Determined. And fortunately, this one is kind of getting to the stage where I'm pretty much done with the major work. Like I still have to work on the cover and some of the description and a few other things. But I've kind of handed this part off to my editors, and I'll have one more round of edits that I'll have to go through. But that's still on my list. Not as much work as I have had to put into it, but it's still there. I've got Medical Degree Financial University, or MDFU, which is the product I'm creating to teach doctors how to create an FU account so they can practice medicine because they want to and not because they have to. I'm currently in the process of custom building this website for this product because I want to host it on the Physician Philosopher. I want to have complete control over that, so that if some other site goes down, I don't have to worry about that. It's on my own stuff. But I'm custom building it, and I want it to be really awesome, and I'm putting a ton of work into that. I've got the podcast, obviously, where you're listening to this now, or the show as you're watching this on YouTube. Yes, we do have a YouTube channel. You can actually watch these videos. And so go look it up, The Physician Philosopher. We produce one podcast episode per week, and soon I'll be introducing a co-host. I'm super excited about having her on this show as we dive into the money segment. So basically every other week we're going to be doing, life and mindset, and then every other week we'll be doing money. So stay tuned for that as I introduce her on the show in the next month or two. And then I've got the Alpha Coaching Experience, which is our coaching program for doctors who are trying to create a life they love in medicine. Maybe they're working through transitions, trying to figure out their next step in their career. And then I added on this potential master's degree in medical management. And I would be using that as something to help me in my brick and mortar job as an anesthesiologist at Wake Forest. And the hope would be to use those skills through the MMM to improve things at Wake. And like any hospital or program, things can always be better, right? So improving things is always going to be a goal, no matter what. And I figured, hey, these skills could help me do that. Since this is something I talk about so much, the culture of medicine. Maybe if I wanted to be a chief, clinical officer or chief operating officer or a chief wellness officer someday, that these skills might be helpful. So these are the things that are on my list professionally. And then there are, of course, the other non-urgent yet highly important asks on my time. Things like pursuing my wife, being involved in my kids' lives, my 3 kids, my emotional, my physical, my spiritual health. Can I fit it all in? Will I be able to master my schedule, or is it going to master me? Are all of these things really on my hell yes policy? I guess that's ultimately what I'm asking. Are these on my hell yes policy? And as I've been thinking through this, there's a couple of ways that I've started to think through it. And one is remembering my overall purpose. A great place to start when you sort through things like this is to step back and say, okay, what is my why? What is my purpose? What is the reason for all of this madness in my life? And on the professional front, my why is extremely specific. It's a two-pronged approach, a two-pronged attack, which is I want to improve the systemic culture of medicine, which in my view is pretty broken. In other words, I want to end moral injury and work toward a field that doctors love working in when they take care of patients, one with work-life balance, full engagement at work, and it's chock full of intrinsic motivation. So fixing the bigger picture, the systemic culture of medicine, that is one of my whys. The second why is to empower individual doctors until that medical system is fixed. And this is accomplished through my business, teaching doctors about mindset, about money, and about time management. So when I look back at my list of potential asks on my time, how do those stack up to my 2 whys, my 2 overall purposes? Do they fall in line with that overall purpose? And, well, let's look at them. So the book, I guess as I think about that, is actually accomplishing both of those goals, right? Honestly, the first half of the book is really kind of describing what exactly the problem is and how that impacts individual physicians. And this podcast, is a way of doing that the same. This podcast where you're listening to me right now or watching this on YouTube, it accomplishes the same thing. What about those other things, though? MDFU, okay. Well, that's specifically about empowering individual doctors, teaching you how to have financial freedom, to become financially literate and to use financial independence. So, you might have zero financial knowledge and you want to learn how to, use money as a weapon, because money is a weapon. It's a double-edged sword. It is either going to be used against you or you can use it and wield it for you, because it can help solve a lot of problems when you have the financial freedom to stand up and speak up and do what you want with your life. It also helps solve a current, situation, that I have personally, this MDFU, the product, because I get asked to speak all over the country about personal finance. I get emails every single week about, coming and speaking for some residency or a grand rounds presentation or at some conference about personal finance for physicians. And I love that I'm getting asked so much to do that. But, a lot of these learners, like I don't at this point have the time or the ability to go and speak for, a group of 10 residents in, Florida or, wherever. I have to leverage my time to help reach as many doctors as I can, right? So if I'm trying to empower individual doctors at this point, I have to think about how can I do that in a way that leverages helping as many people as I can. And MDFU absolutely helps me do that. And then I got the coaching program, ACE. Well, obviously that's about empowering physicians. That's exactly what that's about. It's been changing hundreds of doctors' lives. It's clearly accomplishing my second goal of empowering individual doctors. And actually, I think it also actually works towards the first, because when you have these doctors that are empowered, it's kind of a grassroots effort that we can go and change the culture of medicine, right? We can stand up for the change that we know we need to see inside of medicine. So it's kind of accomplishing both. And that brings us to this master's degree, which is kind of the point, right? Like, this is the thing that I'm struggling with. Now, as you listen to the show, you might be struggling with something else and thinking through like, hey, do I really need to add this to my list of to-dos? Or is there something on my list that is not particularly helpful that's there? And so I'm going to use the master's degree as an example as I think through this, but I also want you to consider, like, what in your life do you currently have going on? Do you need to be doing all of it? Is there some add that you're considering, adding to your schedule? And so the master's degree, how does that fit in? Overall purpose. Well, it's certainly going to teach me the skills that I need to lead in medicine. So, if I ever did want to become a chief operating officer, a COO, or a chief wellness officer, or CWO, to kind of move that needle in medicine at the hospital where I work, yeah, I guess I could prove helpful, right? And this could allow me to understand the inner workings of administrators and their plight in medicine, because, we all love to throw stones at administrators, and which I think is actually a bit of misplaced blame. I don't think that administrators are inherently or intrinsically evil. I actually think that they are usually good people in bad situations, and they use the metrics that they can measure to make changes. But all that said, it would help me understand them and understand the pressures they have and the tools that they're taught and how to deal with stuff. But this begs the question, is it really accomplishing either of my two purposes? And do I really need to check that box in order to change the systemic nature of moral injury in medicine? Couldn't I just do that in my business at the Physician Philosopher without the master's degree through, books and podcasts and teaching people in online products, whether that's courses or coaching or, MDFU? Is it helping me empower individual doctors? Yeah, possibly. I could have the opportunity to change the culture where I work. But if I'm being honest, any of you that have done work inside of hospitals, particularly big organizations, it is such a big machine. It's hard to move the needle. And, as anyone that's worked in this space kind of knows, that medicine tends to have a very reactionary culture. And I don't know if you have the same kind of mantras where you work that I do where people just say, well, this is the way we've always done it, as if that's like a reason to keep doing things the same way. We've always done it this way. Okay, well, that doesn't mean it's a good idea anymore. Maybe it worked 30 years ago. Does it still work today? So maybe I'll chalk the master's degree up to probably whether it would truly help me accomplish, my bigger purpose. It would definitely help me move the needle on the overarching medicine, and maybe, I could make changes and help and become a leader. And then empowering individual doctors, that's a soft maybe. And so, but still, it's accomplishing some of it. And so, I think that, hey, this still makes sense at this point. Like, I'm thinking through this process, and this still makes sense. But then I got to like this time matrix. So Stephen Covey, who's the author of The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, man, like, this is such a powerful thing to think through stuff in your life. This leads us to, the second tool that I've used to think through this and I want to share with you. It's a tool that's powerful in determining what things we're saying yes to right now that are making us say no to other things that are a hell yes for us in our hell yes policy. So Stephen Covey breaks down time management tasks into two different categories. They are important and non-important. That's one kind of category. And then the other category is urgent and non-urgent. And then he uses those four things to kind of create a matrix, a 4, quadrant matrix. And, things like, you could have important and urgent, or important and non-urgent. The third category would be like not important and urgent, and not important and non-urgent, right? So obviously you don't want to spend any of your time in that not important, non-urgent category, right? Like that, like 0% of your time should be spent there. Now, that's not to say that 0% of your time is actually not spent there, but you don't want to be spending your time on things that aren't important and they're also not urgent. So for example, in the urgent and important quadrant, you might place things like emergent medical problems. So we recently had to go to the emergency department for my youngest because she was having abdominal pain and had to get an ultrasound, and like, it's kind of, it just threw everything for a loop. Like, our entire day was in disarray because, obviously our littlest, Anna Ruth, is, a huge priority for us. And so it doesn't matter what else is going on. Like, she's going to take prioritization that day. It was important because it's our little girl, and it's urgent because, there's a timely nature to it. And so everything stopped. Like, we just had to go deal with that. A death in the family is another example of this, right? Something that's urgent and important. Yet it's really kind of the second quadrant that becomes important when you think about like the kind of conversation we're having right now about this master's degree. So things that are important but non-urgent. So what do I mean when I say that? For me, this includes things like date nights with Kristen. So pursuing my wife is almost never urgent. And if it gets urgent, your relationship's in a tough spot, right? Like you're really hurting if it becomes that urgent of a thing. So it's non-urgent, but it's it is always important. So quality time with my kids, that's another one. Or reading scripture and praying, like, growing my spiritual wellness, my spiritual faith, exercising, 8 hours of sleep, traveling to see family, calling friends and family. Like, all of those things are highly important things that if you ignore them for a long period of time, like, your life is not going to look like you want it to 6 months, 6 years down the road. These tasks usually have zero urgency to them, but if they go ignored for too long, it can cause catastrophic consequences in your life. These non-urgent but important tasks are the things that you get to put back on the back burner if you say yes to too many things. These are the things that get forced into obscurity when we are too busy. And that's why people look up 6 months, 6 years down the road, and all of a sudden they're like, man, like, my life does not look like it reflects my priorities. And the reason why is because you're so busy that those non-urgent tasks get put on the back burner. Like, I haven't worked out recently as much as I normally do because I've just been super busy. I just finished up a week of pain call in the hospital, long days for 7 days in a row. And I didn't have a lot of time to work out. And before that, the week before that, I was busy building MDFU. And so had a couple of other unexpected things come up, and that kind of threw, a monkey wrench in those things as well. So that made it problematic to work out. It is a non-urgent but highly important task that if I keep ignoring, I'm going to not be as healthy, right? So this is why it's fundamentally important to be clear about what your hell yeses are, because those are the things, those really important things are what you start saying no to. So in the second light, when I think about this is kind of when I realized that the master's degree, like, the timing's just not great right now, right? Right now, it doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense. Now, it doesn't mean that I don't want to pursue the master's in medical management. Maybe it'll make sense a year from now or 2 years from now. But right now, with all of these other things going on, it seems like something that would be a large enough ask on my time that I would have to start saying no to many of these non-urgent yet highly important tasks in my life. In addition to that, it could also make me sacrifice, work on this podcast or my coaching program or MDFU or promoting my upcoming book, which are all, to me, certain hell yeses. Like, those things, the, alpha coaching experience, MDFU, promoting the book, this podcast, to me are definitely hell yeses professionally in this business. And maybe the best course of action, is to pause things. And in fact, that's what I ended up doing after I scripted the notes for the show. As I was thinking through this, I sent an email to the program I applied and said, hey, can I defer my application for a year? And it was hard to write that email because I'm someone who traditionally is an action taker. I'm a go-getter. And so that also means that I tend to pull the trigger on decisions a little too quickly sometimes. And, and to be honest, this master's degree isn't like a cold, hard no for me. Like, it's not like I don't want to do it. And so as I thought through this process, it was actually really challenging. I spent the last 3 or 4 weeks thinking about this, and I record these shows in advance. So as these episodes come out, like, sometimes, shows that I've recorded talking about, other stuff has happened. It's happened actually, 4 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago when I recorded it. But this one's actually pretty fresh. So this one will be coming out pretty soon after I record it. And if I'm being honest, when I thought about this master's degree, it just made it really clear to me when I started thinking about all the things I'd have to say no to if I said yes to this. Other things that are on my priority lists, particularly that are non-urgent but highly important, as I considered pursuing this. So if I'm being honest, it also isn't as high up on the priority list as those other things to me, as being a dad, as being a husband, being able to go to my kids' flag football games on Sunday instead of working, because that's what happens, right? When you make yourself too busy, you work on nights, you work on weekends, you stop exercising, like all of that stuff. So if I'm going to hold to saying no to anything that doesn't make me say hell yes, and if in particular I'm going to schedule my priorities instead of letting my, master my schedule, instead of letting my schedule master me, I had to say no for now. And so because I want to be able to say hell yes to what matters most to me in life. And this means no for the master's degree for now. So hopefully as I thought through this decision in my own life on this show, you found some golden nuggets about how to think through this yourself, your overall purpose, or thinking through the non-urgent but highly important tasks in your life that you would probably ignore if you ended up saying yes to too many things. And right now, I am personally choosing my family and my business over this potential professional opportunity in my brick and mortar job at Wake. And as with anything, this could change. But at this point, I can't say hell yes to the master's degree without saying no to something else that matters dearly to me. And I refuse to let my schedule master me because Kristen and my kids deserve better than that. And so as you think through your life, are there things in your life right now that you are thinking through, struggling with? Do you feel too busy? Are you considering adding a monumental task to your schedule? And what are you going to have to say no to in order to do that? Because you will have to say no to something that you're currently doing in most busy doctors' lives. Think about it. Chew on it. Let me know. Shoot me an email at jimmy@thephysicianphilosopher.com if this show has kind of encouraged you to think through some things that you're doing in your life that you may consider stopping or that you're considering adding but you're not going to now. And make sure that whatever's in your schedule, you're able to do what you need so that you can say hell yes to the things that matter most to you and learn how to say no to anything that doesn't meet that, doesn't measure up, doesn't add up to that hell yes. So as we round out the show, don't forget the Passive Real Estate Academy is open for enrollment until April 17th. This course is run by Peter Kim over at Passive Income MD and teaches you how to confidently invest in real estate deals so you can make income in real estate without being a landlord. If you want to learn more about that, you can learn more and enroll by visiting thephysicianphilosopher.com/PREA as in Passive Real Estate Academy. Everyone, loved talking through this with you on the show. Hopefully keeping it real is helpful for you, and that you see that I'm human. I work through these things too. I have to figure this stuff out, and I make decisions that I end up going back on just like anybody else. So today's thought is this: we can master our schedule as a busy physician, or our schedule will master us. Until next time, my friends, start before you're ready. Start by starting. Start now. I will see you next week.